Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Meet the computer you can talk to. With Copilot on Windows, working, creating, and collaborating is as easy as talking. Got writer's block? Share your screen with Copilot Vision to help spark inspiration, and use Copilot Voice to have a conversation and brainstorm ideas. Or maybe you need some tech help. With Copilot Vision, Copilot sees what you see. Let Copilot talk you through step-by-step guidance so you can master new apps, games, and skills faster. Try now at windows.com/Copilot.
Roger, that's a rough guess right now, over. 1-1. Right outside the building.
Welcome to True Spies, Brief Histories. We're living through an era in which the impact of spies, subterfuge, and covert influence is increasingly visible. We're bombarded with news about foreign interference, wartime propaganda, and threats from cyberspace. And that's just for starters. But how did we get here? In these bonus minisodes, we'll explore the long history of spycraft. And with the help of our deep bench of espionage experts, we'll bring you up to speed on the past, present, and possible future of this ancient profession.
He provided information about the nuclear missile locations. What he provided was top-grade intelligence.
I'm Joe Foley, series producer for True Spies, and this is a brief history of double agents. Okay, picture this. You're a Persian king, name of Darius. It's sometime in the 6th century BCE, and you've surrounded the city of Babylon, a city in open revolt against you. But there's no way in. Peering up at the city's great walls, your armies massed around you, you see a group of men, peasants really. They're sort of jigging about on the battlements, shouting. So you listen closer. They're laughing at you. Unbelievable. A year or so goes by, no joy, and now this is getting embarrassing. But one day, a visitor arrives at your tent. You know the guy, his name's Zephyrius, one of your most honoured and honourable warriors. But as he comes through the flap, you notice something off. His hair's been cut down to the scalp, and not well. His back is bloody from what looks like a serious lashing, plus he's short a pair of ears, and a nose. Naturally, you ask him who on earth has disfigured him so badly, and to your surprise, he cracks a blood-stained smile. He's done it to himself. What's going on here? Well, Zephyrius is offering his services. It hasn't escaped his notice that the whole siege thing isn't really working out, so he plans to make a big show of defecting from your side and shacking up with the Babylonian rebels. And from their perspective, he'll have every reason to, because he's going to tell them that you're the one who's ruined his face. Once poor old Zephyrius has been taken inside their gates, the plan goes like this. You select 1,000 men, arm them lightly with nothing more deadly than a dagger, and let Zephyrius lead the Babylonians against them. Your guys will be slaughtered, sure, but stay with it. Because now you're going to do it again. You're going to send 2,000 this time. And then again with 4,000. By the time that you've sacrificed 7,000 men, the Babylonians will be so pleased with Zephyrius that they'll trust him with the keys to the city. Then you launch what looks to be a final desperate assault, surrounding the city in full force. And that's when all this bloodshed pays off. Zephyrius opens the gates from the inside, and your armies flood in and put the rebels to the sword. What you've just heard comes to us from Herodotus, the Greek writer remembered as the father of history. He was writing a century after these events supposedly took place, and even in his own lifetime, he did get a bit of flack for making stuff up. But whether or not this actually happened just so, the story of Zopyrius does give us one of the earliest recorded examples of what we're talking about today, the double agent. Literally the oldest trick in the oldest books, these spies have been deceiving, double-dealing, and defying long odds for millennia. Of course, Zopyrius was a fake defector, but more often than not, double agents really have chosen to betray their own side, usually out of greed, spite, or plain old disillusionment. Sometimes, though, it's out of necessity, or a desire to save one's own skin. By all accounts, Antonio Perez had it pretty good. He was born to a noble Spanish family, and in the year 1567 he was made Secretary of State to King Philip II of Spain. But this powerful diplomat was too clever for his own good. King Philip, and therefore Perez, had a problem. His ambitious, charismatic half-brother, Don Juan of Austria, a man on the rise. And he had a trusted servant, a man called Escobedo, who had been assigned to the Don by the king, perhaps in the hope that he could keep Madrid informed about the Austrian prince's ambitions. But, as it turned out, Escobedo came to actually back Don Juan. When he was recalled to Madrid to report to the king, he started forcefully pressing the Don's agenda. As it happened, Antonio Perez had previously manipulated or selectively presented Don Juan's letters to the king in ways that cast the Austrian in a negative light. Escobedo's reports contradicted Perez's version of events, which then threatened to expose his machinations and undermine his influence at court. That wouldn't do at all. So Perez started insinuating that Escobedo was helping Don Juan to plot against King Philip, and eventually he took matters into his own hands. He had him killed. After Escobedo's murder, the king was horrified. He imprisoned Perez, but the cunning old diplomat escaped, fleeing over the Pyrenees Mountains. Arriving in France, he offered King Henry IV the inside track on Spanish secrets. And in 1593, he travelled to England, plying the same trade there in the court of Elizabeth I, to limited success, but still. He sounds like a textbook turncoat, but letters from other Spanish diplomats reveal another layer to this masterful manipulator, namely that, even in exile, he was constantly prodding at his Spanish sources to try and gauge when, if ever, he might be welcomed back to his homeland, always proclaiming his undying loyalty. In other words, he was a political double agent, playing both sides in the hope of coming out on top. If Perez's story tells us anything, it's that a double agent's motivation is usually, on the most basic level, themselves. And that was certainly true of our next case study.
So D'Eon grows up in Burgundy. Their mother and father were minor noblemen, civic servants, and D'Eon's family purchased vineyards and grew wine like all wealthy families in Burgundy.
The person born Charles D'Eon de Beaumont in 1728 is better remembered as the Chevalier d'Eon. If you've heard the name before, it was probably in the context of their complicated relationship with gender.
The court of Louis XVI legally recognizes D'Eon as a woman. That's an incredible thing to have happened.
So there was something of a pioneer in that regard, but honestly it's not the most interesting thing about them. Because as Professor Gary Cates told True Spies in 2024, the Chevalier d'Eon was also a military hero, diplomat and career spy, sending information back to France under the auspices of a shady, extra-governmental organisation, the King's Secret. Between 1756 and 1763, France fought England and Prussia in the 7 Years' War. But towards the end, the French were being beaten, and like all wars, it would finish up around the negotiating table. The Chevalier d'Eon was one of the diplomats sent to work out a treaty with England, working under the Count de Nivernais. But unbeknownst to the Count, d'Eon had been given a secondary mission, one that, if it was discovered, could utterly tank the fledgling peace. Because the King's Secret wouldn't go down without a fight.
So at exactly the same moment that France is signing a peace treaty with England, there are these secret parts of the French government directed by King Louis XV himself that are exploring how and when a revenge attack could take place. And that is what D'Eon is basically in charge of.
Effectively, the King's Secret were acting against the stated desires of their own government. And the Chevalier D'Eon, apparently a normal diplomat, was actually a double agent for this small cabal of power players. They scouted the English coast, assessing the strength and positions of England's navy, and identifying a likely spot for an invasion, should the opportunity arise. Now, this in itself wasn't that risky for D'Eon, at least as far as the mainstream French government were concerned.
Because he's a double agent within his own government, if he was exposed, in no way would he go to jail. In no way would he be tried.
Their upwardly mobile diplomatic career would have been over, though, and that was what D'Eon cared about most. And later, when they were passed over for the prestigious role of the French ambassador to England, they took it pretty hard.
D'Eon is deeply, deeply hurt and upset that he didn't get this position. Just like there are those of us today that don't get promotions we think we deserve, and we're angry and we're embittered.
If that sounds like motivation to turn, you're right. But sometimes these things take a while to percolate. In the meantime, D'Eon was sent to London, but not as a diplomat. They were there as a spy on the orders of the King's Secret, and they got close to a number of powerful people at the English court, which did take some doing.
One thing he starts doing is feuding with the French ambassador, Vergy, claiming in public, in pamphlets, that Vergy tried to murder him, that Vergy tried to poison him. Why did D'Eon do it? Because it covers his spying activity and furthers his friendship with oppositional English statesmen. In other words, D'Eon can become a much better spy if he's perceived in public as feuding with the ambassador and with being a kind of outlaw.
And when it came to making friends, D'Eon had another ace up their sleeve: barrels of their family's Burgundian wine.
Because of the French rivalry with England, England had subjected French wine to a tariff that was so high that no Englishman imported wine. But D'Eon imports so much French wine that the government can't ignore it, doesn't ignore it, and they basically accuse D'Eon of establishing a side business.
This, along with all the public feuding, made D'Eon unpopular in France, especially among those who weren't privy to the King's Secret. On the other hand, it made them a hero in England, the perfect cover for a French spy. But here's the thing: if you're handling a spy like D'Eon, you need to make sure that they stay on your side. When Louis XV died, his grandson took the throne, and one of the first things Louis XVI did was shut down the shadowy King's Secret. That left D'Eon vulnerable, and when people feel vulnerable, they tend to lash out.
D'Eon basically blackmails the government in Paris, at Versailles. D'Eon basically says, if you don't treat me well and you don't give me what I want, I'm going to make all this public.
News that the French had planned an invasion of the English mainland wouldn't have gone down well.
And you know what's going to happen if I make all this public? England is going to go to war with you. And it's actually going to take back Normandy for itself. Why not? And so D'Eon had the French government over a barrel.
Even the threat of D'Eon going rogue was enough to convince the French to give them what they wanted.
D'Eon wants money, that is a life pension, so D'Eon can live in splendor for the rest of their life, and D'Eon wants to be legally recognized by the French court as a woman. And that's the agreement that's worked out in 1775. And so neither the French government nor the British government can take D'Eon on.
But after the French Revolution, D'Eon lost that hard-won pension. They lived out their twilight years taking part in the odd fencing tournament to make ends meet, and died in relative poverty in 1810 at the age of 86. A sad end to a life defined ultimately not only by their gender identity, but by their willingness to change sides politically.
These cooler days call for layers that last, and Quince is my go-to for quality essentials that feel cosy, look refined, and won't blow your budget. If you're aiming for a wardrobe that feels effortlessly polished, Quince is the place to start. Their pieces strike that rare balance of being both timeless and unmistakably stylish. Their wool coats, in particular, have that refined designer look. The sort of outerwear that instantly pulls an outfit together and remains chic year after year. Because Quince partners directly with top-tier, ethical factories, you're getting luxury-level craftsmanship at a fraction of the price. It's a remarkably elegant way to refresh your winter wardrobe. Go to quince.com/truespies for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/truespies to get free shipping and 365-day returns. quince.com/truespies.
This episode is brought to you by Blink. Doom scrolling during this ad break? Ditch the doom and get peace of mind with new Blink 2K Plus Smart Security. Check on home from your phone with 2K Clarity, noise cancellation, and 4x zoom. Plus, setup is so simple you can easily install while listening to your favorite podcast. True crime girlies? We got you. Get more, spend less with Blink 2K Plus Smart Security.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Jay Kelly, the new film from Academy Award nominee Noah Baumbach. George Clooney stars as an actor confronting his past and present on a journey of self-discovery, alongside Adam Sandler as his devoted manager. Critics are calling it a declaration of love to the chaotic art of filmmaking, with the Wall Street Journal praising it as a transcendent comedy drama. Jay Kelly is now playing only on Netflix.
This episode is brought to you by Marqeta. When it comes to your payments provider, you can't afford to compromise. Marqeta's modern payment solutions flex with your business without the trade-offs. Stable and agile, secure and innovative, scalable and configurable. If they say you can't have it all, don't believe them. Your business demands more. Choose a payments provider that delivers more. Choose Marqeta. Visit marqeta.com/Spotify to learn more.
By the middle of the 20th century, intelligence had evolved. The relatively small scale of organisations like the King's Secret, stocked with a matey cadre of high-born gentlemen, had been replaced by vast formalised agencies operating all around the world. The Cold War had begun, and for would-be double agents, it was a world of opportunity.
Bern, in Switzerland, was then an outpost. It was not what you could call the beating heart of Cold War Europe. It was a backwater. But in April 1958, a letter arrives there addressed to the ambassador. And the writer doesn't give his name. He gives himself only a cover name, a code name. The German word is Heckenschütz. That's what he signed it. And that translates as sniper. And the letter said to the ambassador said, I have a lot of valuable intelligence that I'd like to share with the West.
That's Tim Tate, an author, filmmaker and investigative journalist who spoke to True Spies about Michal Golianevsky, aka Agent Sniper.
What was very clear from the first files I obtained from the CIA was that Golianevsky was probably the most important and valuable spy in the early Cold War that the West ever had.
Golianevsky was a senior officer in the Soviet-aligned Polish intelligence service, the UB. But that wasn't his only job.
He was essentially tasked by the KGB in Moscow with keeping an eye on his official employers in the UB in Poland. And all of that gave him access to an absolute treasure trove of Soviet bloc intelligence secrets.
Over time, Golyanevsky's political allegiances had shifted towards the Democratic, so via the American ambassador in Bern, Switzerland, he got in touch with the FBI. So you might be thinking, why not the CIA? They're supposed to have the international remit.
Because, so he said, his work as a Polish intelligence officer had revealed to him that the CIA was hopelessly penetrated by Soviet bloc intelligence.
If one of those Soviet moles saw what he was offering the US, his life would very likely be forfeit. But unfortunately for Golyanevsky, his letter was intercepted by the agency, and when they read it, they saw enormous potential.
The CIA, Western intelligence, had virtually no insight into what the Soviet bloc was up to or wanted to do. So human intelligence, like Golyanevsky, I mean, it's exactly what the CIA and the West needed.
After vetting their new source, the CIA got in touch with Golyanevsky.
And for the next 3 years, the CIA ran Golyanevsky as an agent in place, undercover, in Poland, under entirely false pretenses. They never said, you're dealing with the CIA. They pretended they were the FBI.
Likewise, the Polish spy never shared his true name. But Agent Sniper proved his value time and time again.
Throughout those 33 months, he delivered an absolute cornucopia of intelligence. And what he was providing was the order of battle for the Soviet bloc, the names and identities and locations of Soviet bloc spies in the West, and they were very senior and serious spies. He provided information about the nuclear missile locations. What he provided was top-grade intelligence, the best the West had had by that point in the Cold War.
All the while, he was still clocking into his regular job at the Polish UB, and nobody was any the wiser. But this couldn't go on forever. There's no more dangerous position in spycraft than a double agent in place. Sooner or later, the UB and the KGB would catch on to the leaks, and when that happened, Golyanevsky would want to be somewhere else entirely.
And he specifically warned his handlers, his Western handlers, in a letter after the first indications that he was going to be blown emerged. He said, please be careful, because if you don't, I will end up being stood up against a wall and shot. He pleaded with them to be careful. And they weren't. They just weren't.
When Golyanevsky warned his handlers of a KGB asset inside the American embassy in Warsaw, they allowed that information to filter down into the compromised State Department. Polish intelligence were tipped off, and they mounted a mole hunt.
Unfortunately for Polish intelligence, the officer they tasked with investigating this leak was Mikhail Golyanevsky, the man who was leaking it himself.
This prince among double agents was about to be blown, so he gathered a trove of secret documents and officially defected to the West.
And so telegrams go out from Moscow and from Warsaw to agents and agent runners saying, you're at risk, you're going to be exposed, disappear. Panic ensues in Soviet bloc intelligence headquarters. And that's pretty quickly overtaken by anger. And so Golyanevsky is tried in absentia by a Polish military court.
Meanwhile, in America, Golyanevsky wasn't being treated particularly well by the government he'd served. The CIA's counterintelligence chief, James Jesus Angleton, had always been suspicious of him, and when a new defector arrived on the scene, a man called Anatoly Golitsyn, he convinced Angleton that almost all the CIA's sources, including Golyanevsky, were feeding the US false information, a paranoid vision of a world in which everyone was a double or triple agent.
It all begins to go wrong for Golyanevsky in the spring of 1963. At that point, his intelligence is being slow-walked by his CIA handlers, and he complains. I've got documents in which he complains to his handlers, look, why is nothing being done? Why are you slow-walking all this material I give you? And his handlers say, yeah, I know, I'm really sorry, we're doing our best, but... That period coincides exactly with Angleton and Golitsyn gaining supremacy within the CIA, and with Golitsyn denouncing every other known defector as bogus. That neglect, if you want, transforms by the end of 1963 into outright hostility from Golyanevsky's CIA handlers. They confiscate his gun, they remove his pistol permit, they suspend him, they put him on leave without pay.
Financially ruined and so far from home, Golyanevsky's mental health deteriorated. In March 1964, an American newspaper published a partial version of his story to the public, the tale of a brave man who was helping the US to win the Cold War. But that same year, Golyanevsky had his own, far stranger story to tell.
In the summer of '64, Golyanevsky then outs himself, or at least outs himself in yet another identity, because that's when he first goes public claiming to be Alexei Romanov, the miraculously surviving son of the last Tsar of Russia, who has come to America as not just to expose spies, but to seek the long-lost and fabled Romanov imperial fortune.
Initially, the whole Romanov story was a way to cash in on the American obsession with the fate of the Russian royal family, who were killed by the Bolsheviks. But by the mid to late 60s, Golyanevsky had convinced himself that he was, in fact, a prince.
The man went mad. Did he go mad on his own? No, I don't think he did. I think the CIA helped push him there.
Stories about double agents rarely end happily. Remember, they're essentially working two jobs, either of which could expose them to very unhappy, possibly unscrupulous people. And while the Cold War was certainly fertile ground for this kind of spy, they remain immensely valuable in the modern era. We're currently experiencing another period of heightened international tension. And with new technological advances, it's never been easier for a latter-day Golyanevsky to leak secrets. Social media makes it easier than ever to recruit double agents, or to identify useful vulnerabilities that could be leveraged. As recently as 2020, former CIA officer and FBI agent Alexander Yukching Ma was charged with conspiracy to pass classified data to China. In 2024, a British soldier, Daniel Khalif, was accused of offering to become a double agent for MI6 after sharing secrets with Iran. Perhaps in years to come, we'll discover more tales of treachery unfolding right now, right under our noses. But until then, all we can do is wait and hope that in the meantime, those working against us slip up. I hope you've enjoyed this short sampler of some of the fascinating double lives we've explored on True Spies. If you'd like to hear more about the Chevalier d'Eon or Mikhail Golyanevsky, search for The King's Secret and Agent Sniper respectively. And they're just the tip of the iceberg. As always, if you want more episodes of True Spies a week early and ad-free, be sure to subscribe to SPYSCAPE Plus. You'll also get access to exclusive bonus content, like the Razumov Files, a modern retelling of Joseph Conrad's Under Western Eyes, and true crime caper The Great James Bond Car Robbery.